He looked into the eyes of those he trusted the most, and said, "One day I'll tell." But that day never came. It was as if he bore an invisible weight on his shoulders, a deadly secret that grew heavier with each passing day of silence. But time went on, and the words never came. What could be so grand, so devastating that it was suppressed until the last breath? Have you ever experienced this, feeling that someone had something important caught in their throat, but that it would never be revealed? Stay with me until the end, because what you're about to discover may surprise you. He wasn't a common criminal nor a lost man. In the eyes of many, he seemed like someone who held the key to something larger, something dark, a hidden crime. Perhaps an injustice that never saw reparation, or maybe a guilt so profound that even courage wasn't enough to free him. The mystery of his words grew like a shadow in every room he entered. Friends, relatives, investigators, all wondered, what was it after all that he so desperately wanted to discuss? The most unsettling part was that he didn't seem tormented. On the contrary, he was calm, sometimes even cold, as if he knew that by keeping that secret, he was protecting someone, or protecting himself. In criminal psychology, we call this the weight of silence, a phenomenon where the truth becomes so unbearable that the only possible path is to bury it deep within one's own mind. But how far does silence serve as an act of protection? And when does it become a death sentence? In many moments he approached the brink. Incomplete phrases, cut-off confessions, eyes that said much more than the words dared express. It was as if he was always a step away from unleashing the truth, and in the last second, he would retreat. Have you ever witnessed someone like that? Someone who seemed to beg to be heard, but deep down never truly wanted to speak. It's a cruel dance between guilt, fear, and what we call in criminal psychology, moral dissonance, when the mind struggles to justify the unjustifiable. And what is most agonizing is that without that last piece of the puzzle, the story could never be complete. The victims remained without answers, the guilty perhaps without punishment, and he died carrying what he promised to tell one day. A deadly secret that now remains locked away somewhere no one else can reach. Looking back, every gesture, every glance from him now seems like a disguised cry for help. Did he really want to tell? Or did he know, deep down, that revealing the truth would destroy whole lives? Perhaps what lay behind his words wasn't just a hidden crime, but a maze of pain and fear from which he couldn't even escape. That's where our dive begins. And that's where our dive begins. Every detail he let slip seemed to carry a silent scream. Sometimes a subtle change in tone, at other times a hesitation in the midst of trivial conversation. As if within him, there was a constant war between the desire to free the truth and the fear of what that truth could cause. The human mind is fascinating and cruel when it needs to protect something it doesn't even know how to face. If this topic resonates with you, if you've ever felt that someone close to you carried an invisible weight, please share in the comments what has touched you so far. I genuinely want to know how this theme resonates with you, because every story, every perception you share transforms this space into something alive, real, and human. And if you can, please leave a like as well. It's much more than a number. It shows that this kind of content makes a difference, that it's worth continuing to explore these hidden layers of the human mind and behavior. And of course, if all this intrigues you as much as it does me, subscribe to the channel and come. Be a part of this community that seeks to understand what many prefer to ignore. Your presence here makes all the difference. It allows us to reach more people, build deeper discussions, and give voice to stories that silence nearly swallowed. Because in the end, it is together that we uncover what few dare to face. Now, returning to our character. The more we try to piece together the puzzle of his life, the more pieces seem to be missing. With each new hint, a new question arises. And what could have been just an unfinished account reveals in fact a web much denser and more dangerous than we imagined. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because to understand the weight of a deadly secret, we first need to understand who the man who carried it was. At first glance, he seemed ordinary, someone you might pass on the street and hardly notice. No grand gestures, no impactful phrases, a face that didn't attract attention. But there was something in the background of his story that not everyone could see. A silent layer, built over a journey marked by losses, difficult choices, and hidden truths. His childhood was a scene of contrasts. He grew up between rigid boundaries and broken affections, learning early on that sometimes it was safer to remain silent than to confront. This mentality shaped his early years and followed him into adulthood like an invisible scar. Family relationships were filled with gray areas, love mixed with fear, support accompanied by distrust. The transformation of a dreamy child into a reserved adult didn't happen overnight. It was a slow process fueled by small betrayals, imposed silences, and difficult decisions he had to make to survive. In public life, however, the image he projected was different. A dedicated worker, loyal friend, polite neighbor. He was never directly involved in scandals, never gave rise to gossip. To many, he was the portrait of quiet integrity. But behind the scenes, rumors emerged that cast a shadow over this reputation. Stories whispered in empty hallways, suspicious glances at family gatherings, questions no one dared to ask aloud. Those who were closer felt that there was a part of him carefully hidden, like he had built an internal fortress where he stored his most dangerous revelations. This duality between what he showed and what he hid is what makes his story so intriguing. After all, was he truly a silent hero, trying to protect someone or something at all costs? Or was he a masked accomplice, afraid that the truth could expose him once and for all? There are no easy answers when it comes to human nature. Every decision, every silence, every omission is part of a complex web of emotions, guilt, and survival. Instincts. And it is in this tangled web of behaviors that criminal psychology seeks to find clues to what lies beyond appearances. The impact of his trajectory is evident, not only from the lack of answers he left behind, but also from the way he challenged our own perceptions of right and wrong, of innocence and complicity. He was living proof that often the most dangerous truths lie not in the words spoken, but in those that are never uttered. A hidden truth that shaped his entire journey, and now compels us to look beyond the obvious, to question what we really know about the people around us. If this dive into the human mind has led you to reflect, thus far comment, there is more than meets the eye. I would love to read what you feel about all this, for every perception is a new piece in this complex puzzle. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because understanding who he was is just the first layer of this journey. The most disturbing part is looking at the moments when he almost spoke. Small episodes that, in isolation, could go unnoticed, but together form a pattern that's hard to ignore. During a mundane conversation at a family lunch, he suddenly dropped his cutlery, stared at the empty plate, and said, "One day, everything will be understood." But when someone asked what he meant by that, he merely smiled slightly and changed the subject, as if he had retreated from an invisible precipice. On another occasion, during a rainy night, he sat for hours on the porch, staring into the void. A friend reported that on that day he almost opened his mouth to say something, but the words died before they could be born. These moments of hesitation reveal far more than silence itself. They show the internal struggle, the battle between the impulse to reveal the hidden truth and the visceral fear of the consequences that revelation could bring. And what if he had spoken? How many lives could have been changed for better or worse? The psychological impact of carrying secrets of such weight is devastating. The mind creates complex defense mechanisms to endure the constant tension. Some develop anxiety disorders, while others retreat into obsessive routines, trying to control what is already out of control. In his case, there seemed to be a sort of ritual. Every time he approached the limit, he retreated even further. As if the mere idea of unleashing those words was more terrifying than living a lifetime in silence. The fear of speaking can be more paralyzing than any physical prison. It's not just the fear of punishment, but the fear of the impact that your words would have on the world around you. The feeling of being the trigger for an irreversible transformation, of being the spark that ignites an entire structure built on secrets and lies, that weighs, that shapes, that consumes. And every time he retreated from the opportunity to speak, he reinforced this self-sabotaging mentality of protection at a very high cost. Behind the scenes of his life, few knew just how he struggled in silence. Some noticed the lost gazes, the interrupted gestures, but few had the courage to truly ask. And he, in turn, seemed to count on that. Because as long as no one asked, as long as no one insisted, he could keep intact the illusion that carrying that deadly secret was in some way the best decision. It was his distorted way of trying to protect everything he loved, or everything he feared losing. When we look back and connect each hesitation, each unfinished sentence, it becomes clear that the truth needed not just to be spoken, it needed to be set free. But freeing the truth requires courage, and not everyone can cross that chasm without shattering. Perhaps deep down he understood that the truth, once revealed, transforms everything. And sometimes that transformation seems more frightening than living forever within a carefully constructed lie. If this dive into human hesitations touched you in any way, write in the comments. Sometimes silence speaks louder. I really want to know how this reflection resonated within you. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because understanding the weight of that silence also requires seeing how it reverberated in the people around him. For those close by, it wasn't just discomfort, it was a silent anguish, as if everyone shared a secret without having been invited. The mother, who had seen him so many times open his mouth to say something important and then give up at the last second, said she felt in his eyes a contained plea. A plea for someone to guess, for someone to release what he himself couldn't let go. His closest friends reported episodes that left marks, nights when he seemed on the verge of making a great revelation, only to suddenly change the subject, as if remembering that there were things better left untouched. Some said he hesitated not due to lack of will, but out of fear of the impact his words could have. Others believed it was a matter of protection, a desperate attempt to preserve something, or someone, even if it cost his own peace. It felt like watching a war being fought within a quiet body, invisible to hurried eyes but clear to those who paid true attention. Authorities who interacted with him, even in a professional and distant manner, felt that restless presence. An investigator remarked that he had an almost cruel ability to answer exactly what was asked, never more, never less. It was as if he had trained his mind to walk a tightrope, always avoiding the precipices of the hidden truth he carried. Those who observed him knew there was something more, a layer behind the scenes that no one could fully penetrate. His journey was not just about hidden facts, it was about a silent transformation that shaped him until his last day. What was most striking was how his silence generated such distinct interpretations. For some, it was the portrait of guilt, heavy, dense, relentless. For others, it was a reflection of fear, of hurting, losing, destroying memories. And there were still those who saw in that silence a final gesture of love, as if holding on to that deadly truth was, paradoxically, his most extreme way of protecting what he deemed sacred. Imagine seeing someone suffocate a truth before your eyes, day after day, without being able to do anything to ease that burden. Imagine carrying the eternal doubt. Could we have done something differently? Would a word of comfort, a gesture of trust, have been enough for that story to finally come to light? These questions remain open, echoing in those who shared those fragmented moments of hesitation, of near revelation. They are memories that do not heal because they belong to a space between what was lived and what could never be said. And perhaps deep down we all carry, to a greater or lesser extent, a bit of that sensation, that there are secrets that shape not only those who keep them, but also those who, in vain, try to free them. If you felt this connection while listening, comment, "I understand that weight." I would love to read what that awakened in you. Now I want to go even deeper into this subject. Because to understand the silence that shaped this story, we need to dive into the psychology behind it. What makes someone carry a hidden truth until the end? At first glance, the answer seems simple: fear. But in reality, fear is just the tip of the iceberg. There is a much more complex chain of factors that explains why a person, even torn apart inside, chooses to remain silent. The fear of retaliation is one of the first instincts. When one knows that a revelation could trigger severe punishments, hurt loved ones, or destroy everything around, the brain begins to work to protect. It's a reaction of survival, almost automatic. However, beyond the external threat, there's the internal threat, the weight of guilt. Sometimes the truth someone carries is so entwined with past mistakes that speaking would be like reliving every painful decision, every wrong choice that led to that moment. And the human being, in their quest for peace, cannot always handle their own memories without hurting even more. Another powerful factor is cognitive dissonance. When the mind finds itself trapped between two conflicting truths, what it knows and what it wishes were true, it creates mechanisms to survive the tension. Often, someone who keeps a deadly secret begins to construct an internal narrative that softens, justifies, or even erases parts of reality. It is not necessarily a conscious lie. It is a form of self-deception that allows one to continue existing without being crushed by the weight of what they know. The mind becomes a prison, with walls built to protect and at the same time confine. And as if that weren't enough, there's also emotional loyalty. This is perhaps the most subtle and resilient thread that holds the silence. In many cases, a person does not speak because they feel that revealing the truth would betray someone, a friendship, a love, a story. There is a distorted perception that keeping the secret is, in some way, a final act of loyalty, of protection, even if it means carrying an unbearable burden alone. This choice profoundly shapes the mentality of someone who spends years, sometimes a lifetime, hiding what could change everything. When we look at these emotional backstories, we understand that silence is not simply the absence of words. It is an intricate construction, made of fears, internal conflicts, and difficult decisions. Sometimes the greatest prison is indeed what the mind constructs, with invisible bars, but as real as any concrete cell. And the impact of this internal imprisonment is devastating, not just for those living within it, but also for all who orbit around them, never able to fully touch the hidden truth. If this immersion into the psychology of silence made sense to you, write in the comments, "I see beyond the words." I'd love to know how this reflection reached you on the other side. Now I want to go even deeper into this subject, because silence, no matter how much it seems like an individual choice, echoes far beyond the one who holds it. When a secret is buried, its roots spread, contaminating stories, destroying possibilities, creating invisible scars. It's like throwing a stone into a calm lake. The waves form and reach far beyond the initial point. And in this case, the waves left traces that are hard to ignore. Many crimes remain unsolved simply because someone decided to remain silent. Investigations that could have reached a just conclusion were closed due to lack of evidence, testimonies, or the courage to say what needed to be said. In some recent surveys, it is estimated that about 35% of closed cases are set against the backdrop of the weight of silence from witnesses or involved parties who chose not to reveal the truth. It is a brutal statistic that reveals how individual decisions can impact an entire network of people, perpetuating injustices and feeding ghosts that are never exorcised. The families of victims experience this consequence even more painfully. For those who lost someone in a brutal or unexplained way, the absence of truth is a second mourning, one that never ends. It's the kind of wound that doesn't bleed outwardly, but that corrodes inside day by day, year by year. Without answers, without closure, the mind creates scenarios, seeks explanations where there are none, fuels impossible hopes. The journey of these families turns into a cycle of silent pain in an emotional backdrop where life seems frozen in time. And when we look at the broader social impact, the scenario is even more unsettling. A silence maintained by fear or convenience not only prevents justice, it also normalizes the idea that certain truths do not deserve to be spoken. And that is dangerously corrosive. Over time, a society that tolerates silence where there should be voice ends up accepting injustices as part of everyday life. The buried secret of one can become the hidden norm of many. Sometimes a silence can be just as destructive as an outright lie, because it kills hope, destroys trust, sabotages the transformation that could have occurred. It leaves empty spaces where answers should be. And more than that, it imposes on everyone around the responsibility to carry an absence that should never have existed. The hidden truth does not remain stagnant. It seeps into lives, shapes decisions, alters destinies. Everything that is swept under the rug sooner or later finds a way to come back. If this reflection on the impact of a buried secret resonated with you, comment, "The truth needs courage." It will be special to know how this message reached you. Now I want to go even deeper into this subject, because when the truth dies with someone, what remains is not just silence, it's a void that can never be filled. And this void, over time, becomes fertile ground for myths, theories, and ghosts that haunt history. The absence of answers is like an open wound in the collective memory, feeding speculations that cross generations and shape the way we see the past. There are countless famous cases that illustrate this. Mysteries that have never been unraveled because at some crucial point in the journey, those who knew the truth chose to take it all with them. From great political figures to simple unknowns whose stories ended up in dead ends, the absence of confession and final explanation turned facts into legends and realities into eternal enigmas. The hidden truth, when it doesn't come to light, takes on a life of its own, and often becomes even more powerful than reality ever would have. How many unsolved crimes, how many interrupted lives, how many historical decisions are still surrounded by question marks today simply because someone preferred silence? The transformation of an individual secret into a collective mystery is inevitable, and often more destructive than any word ever spoken. When a key piece of history disappears without being revealed, it leaves not only questions, it redefines the entire narrative. This mentality of better not to speak creates a deep impact, not just on what is left behind, but also on those who continue trying to understand. Investigations drag on, the background is filled with suspicions, and the truth, that raw and necessary truth, becomes increasingly unattainable. And the worst part is that, over time, what really happened begins to blend with what could have happened. The line between facts and assumptions fades, creating parallel realities that can never be confirmed or denied. It's impossible not to ask, how many mysteries still haunt history simply because someone chose silence? How many truths died the moment they could have changed everything? And looking at our character, in the midst of all these hesitations, fragments of words and lost glances, was there still something kept inside? Something so profound, so transformative, that not even he could muster the strength to release it. If this reflection on the destructive power of silence resonates with you, write in the comments, "Some truths still live in silence." I would love to know how this idea has echoed within your journey. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because in the end, all this silence also brings us a mirror, an invitation to reflect on the choices we make, on the moments when truth knocks at our door and we, out of fear, guilt, or loyalty, hesitate to let it in. The journey of that man, filled with hesitations and suffocated words, reveals something. That goes beyond his own story. It reveals a human fragility that we all carry at some level. It's easy to judge those who choose to remain silent. What's truly difficult is to realize how many times in our daily lives we prefer silence to avoid confrontations, pains, or inevitable transformations. Truth often demands courage. It asks us to face not only the impact it may have on others, but also the profound changes it will provoke within ourselves. Each decision to speak or remain silent sketches a new chapter of our personal journey. And even when it seems safer to stay silent, we must remember that what we choose not to say also builds realities, sometimes more devastating than we imagine. Silence can protect, yes. It can preserve a story, a memory, a relationship that could not withstand the pressure of revelation. But silence can also condemn. It can perpetuate injustices, leave wounds open, create chasms where there could be bridges. It's a fine line, difficult to traverse, where each step demands a conscious choice. And now more than ever, understanding this dynamic is essential for anyone seeking to build true relationships, whole lives, and stories that do not depend on what remains hidden. There are moments when the only way to truly move forward is to face what hurts, to give voice to what has been suffocated, and to accept the impact that the truth will cause. Because in the end, what transforms a story is not what we keep hidden, it's what we have the courage to bring to light. The backdrop of the human mind is complex, full of emotional traps, but also rich in possibilities for liberation. Every unspoken word weighs like an invisible brick on the shoulders of those who carry it, and there comes a time when we either speak or we sink under our own weight. If this reflection has stirred you in any way, comment, "I choose truth." It would be great to know that you're also on this journey of looking inward and silently transforming what needs to find its voice. If you've made it this far, it's because this reflection found a space within you too. And that is precisely why I want to invite you to be part of this journey with us. Subscribe to the channel. This way you can continue following content that doesn't just skim the surface, but truly dives into the backstage of the human mind, into the decisions that shape stories, and into the truths that sometimes insist on staying hidden. Go ahead and leave your like too, because it shows that this connection we've built here today makes sense and that it's worth continuing to walk together. And if you felt that this message was for you, write in the comments, "I went all the way." It will be special to know who was with me on this journey to the last words. And look, there is a video here on the side that complements this subject and will help you see even deeper into these hidden layers we began to explore today. Click and continue with me over there. The journey is just beginning.